all. Good evening and welcome to Medical Billers Network Live. Thank you guys so much for being so patient. We're running a little behind today. Hope you guys are having a great week before the big week of testing parenting. All of the bounds of like requirements of things that have to happen before the holidays hit, from family stuff to kids and all that. So everything in between. Hello, newbie. Great to see you. Hello, Nurse Shells. Hey, Nick, great to see you. Great to see you. Hi, Ashley. Hello. Welcome. When you guys get in the space, let's talk about holiday plans. Say hello. Let us know that you're here and share what you're doing over the holidays. Let me know. Okay, Rose just popped out. She'll be right back. We're having some technical difficulties today, so she's going to get right back on. But as you guys join, let us know where you're joining in from. And today's discussion is about billing workflow. So my billers in the house, you get to share all the things about your workflow. Let me know in the comments, are you already a biller? Are you doing billing day to day? Say hello to your fellow billers in the house and those who are aspiring to bill. So I love it. Let's see. I love all these questions. We've got a few good questions that have already come in before. Newbie, thank you so much for sending such great questions. Today we're talking about a biller's workflow, and we're going to say very general as far as the topic of discussion goes today. So our kind of thinking higher level about what a general role of a biller is. And last week, I think it was a tribe last week who asked for us to share about the workflow that we use as a billing team. And so we're going to go into that on our next live. So just so that you guys know, this week is a live that we're having. Okay, I did not mean to say that. We're having a live this week, and then next week we are not having a live stream. So just keep that on your calendars that we are actually not, we're skipping a week just in honor of the holiday, and then we are back on the 29th, I think is the date. Yep, 29th. So we're back on the 29th, and when we're back, we're talking workflow. We're going to just have a little fun discussion too, because it's the end of the year. So we'll talk a little bit about New Year, New You, like what's going on in your new year. And today we're celebrating that we launched or put live another course on this site. So the language of billing is up. So we've got language of billing and billing 101 back up live. Are you ready, Rose? I just saw you pop in. Can you pop her in? There we go. Hey, can you hear us?
Hey, yeah, I can hear now. I'm so sorry about that. I don't know what was going on.
Oh, good. I'm glad it's working. So yay, you guys are so great. Thank you for the comments and the questions. Newbie, I'm gonna stick around because we're gonna look at your questions. I'm just gonna say hello to everyone who's in here. So hello, Teresa. So happy. Yay, getting back into your billing game. What were you doing for a little while? Did you go into a different part of healthcare? Just curious. Ashley, great to see you. Medical biller for a government agency, studying for CPB. And you have your billing and coding with another agency already. So you're getting CPB, and are you going to stay in government billing? Or are you going to stay working for an agency? Curious, Ashley. Curious. Let's see. Hi, Jaleesa. Hello. I'm new to medical billing, and I got my first job as a biller doing AR collections, and now they want me to do insurance recoupment. I don't understand that at all. Oh, yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that. That's a great question. Can you hear? We're good?
I think I'm good now. I'm so sorry. I have no idea what's going on. My sound just keeps cutting in and out.
All good.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Oh, yeah. Hold on. You got to go on this again. All right. I'm so sorry. Hello. How is everybody today?
Yes. I'm sorry. I was just looking at Teresa's message there. Yeah, I feel you. The last 2 years, definitely the last 2 years have been rough. They have been rough. So, I almost clicked on that sharing. There we go. All right, we got a bot in the chat.
Oh, we do. How nice.
I have love right here. Everyone's here. Hello, billers. Okay, so today we're talking workflow stuff, and best thing is that we've got experience on different kind of areas in healthcare. I know that there's a bunch of folks on here that are haven't said anything yet, and if you already are, if you're in the billing department already, tell us a little bit about the area that your perspective is in right now. So, are you a biller in an agency, a billing company, a practice, a hospital? Let us know what your perspective is, so we kind of know the mix. And folks that are asking questions maybe want to learn. Hello, hi, it's all about medical billing, or it's all medical billing. Good evening. So, okay, I see Ashley answered. I'm going to stay with the government doing medical billing, and I want to be a CPB. You love your chapter. Good. Yeah, it does look good on a resume. You should apply for an officer role. That looks good on your resume too. And it's just fun to, boss people around. I'm just kidding. Be in charge of the chapter and be able to organize events and feel free, feel connected to the members. So sometimes the roles aren't as heavy, not trying to be the president per se of it. So billing institution. Okay. What kind of institutional billing? I'm just curious. I'm just going to share chats in here because I know that we're live on a couple of different platforms. So that's one of the main reasons why we like to share chats, because it lets everyone know what we're referring to, because not everybody sees them cross-platform. So billing owner, I love it. And now working in a doctor's office, a new instructor, yay. How many years of experience do you have at billing? I love that. Working in a doctor's office, so good. All right. So Rose, share briefly your journey into billing, just for folks who haven't seen the previous discussion that we had. Just sharing whether what types of billing departments you've worked in, and if you've been in a clinic or not. So,
okay. I have not been in a clinic. What I started out doing was I made my way into billing. I started working for a convalescent ambulance service, and started off in dispatch. From there, I went to working on basically authorizations to make sure that these patients could get their convalescent transports. From there, I went to actually billing Medicaid only. Let me take that back. Let me change that. I went to billing for a county in our state, their EMS billing.
Okay.
And then I moved from that to billing that particular thing, but also solely Medicaid billing for ambulance services. From there, once I left that company, I went to another billing company, in which we did a little bit of everything. What I specialized in at the time was podiatric medicine, and a little bit of chiropractic services. I also did some behavioral health, but it was more of like the neuropsychological testing, so not necessarily therapy type billing.
So you've done mostly billing company work, though, primarily, right? So at a billing company.
Pretty much. The where I started out was mainly billing. The company's no longer active. It was like I said, it was a convalescent ambulance service. And
okay, so it was actually the service that
I was with that service, okay. But they had a separate, they call it their sister company. They had a separate space that they also did billing for other, like for different counties, they also did office billing, medical office billing.
Okay.
There as well. So I kind of just migrated from one to the other.
Love it. Yeah. So, and I'll just share just briefly about my experience. So I've been in the office, or had been in the office for the first few years of my billing career. So first started at the front desk, and those of you who haven't seen this before, I started or haven't, had me share about my history before. I started actually at the front desk somewhat. I was at the front desk, but the front desk was closed because I was doing marketing calls for a practice, and that was my first job. So I basically started working at the front desk when no one else was there. That was my first position, and then I moved into doing the reception, and then moved into billing assistant, and kind of all the way up, and eventually moved into practice manager. And so when I was doing practice manager, when I was a practice manager for a couple of different practices, it shifted very quickly to me hiring a couple of billers and overseeing their work while also doing some aspects of the billing. So there were at that clinic, we had a lot of personal injury, workers' compensation cases where I actually would go to the attorney's offices and have relationships like with the local agencies and like employers department. So I did a lot of interfacing with those individuals, and so that was definitely a different type of function as a biller. But I absolutely, at that time is when I started pivoting to more oversight, and then also still doing, I'd say maybe 25 to 30% of my day as a biller. But I did a lot of overseeing team members' work and kind of delegating, especially areas around data processing. I moved out of very quickly so I could focus on accounts receivable and all of that. At that time in healthcare, charge entry was still a thing, all this stuff. But in short, I moved out of being in a clinic to then working in a billing department. So really kind of when I say a billing department, we were on a totally different floor from the actual clinic. So we hardly even saw the providers except for higher level leadership that would come up for meetings. And so that's where it pivoted, where I wasn't doing a lot of face-to-face with anybody in clinic, didn't have to deal very closely with patients, not really doing any financial discussions or consultations or anything like that. So that was just before I started my billing company. Moving in a billing company, I started like very grassroots. I did everything. Like I did the charge entry back then. You did the charge entry. We did insurance verifications. We did all this stuff. So moving to now, which I run a billing company, we do among other things as well. And so my days spent with a lot of meetings, looking at numbers, looking at statistics. I do engage quite a bit with the offshore team and the managers over there as well, and out at work. And I'm looking at ways to improve and kind of really augment the services and delivery. So it's a little different. But just so you guys know where we're coming from today, and you know a little bit about our history, I want to just go really, really high level now and just talk more broadly about what we're chatting about here, because I know that there are folks here, and if y'all are in here and you are brand spanking new to billing and don't know what we're talking about, this whole section I'm about to move into is exactly for you. So I want to make sure you know a little bit about when we say a medical biller, what are we really saying? And so I love you guys. Thank you so much for sharing. So it's all about medical billing. It's all medical billing. Sorry, I keep adding an about in your name. It's all medical billing says that I'm a billing company owner working at the doctor's office. I'm a new instructor. In case you guys missed that share, last employment was I'm assuming that's a financial services representative. That's typically what FSR stands for, but I'm not sure. So rev cycle in the hospital, love it. It's all medical billing, has been at it 16 years. That's a victory. And I know you said you're doing instructing, which is awesome. And yeah, revenue cycle management, orthopedic, practice and dental, love it. Love it. So I'm going to share real quick. We're going to look at the concept of medical billing real fast and just talk a little bit through when we say medical billing, what could it mean? So a little bit more broad. And then what does a typical day of a biller look like? So when we're looking at the healthcare revenue cycle, which in a nutshell is the way that money moves through any organization, right? So it's starting out when the money is generated, the patient makes their way into the office by scheduling, by being referred, right? And then the services are created. And I have no idea if you guys can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse if I move around? Is that a thing? No? Okay. So very top of the screen, I got head shaking in the back space. Very top of the screen says referral. There's that first circle, and we're moving clockwise. So from that referral, the patient is getting to the office in some way, whether it's being referred by a provider or they're coming in themselves. And then the appointment is happening. So they're getting scheduled for their appointment, and the visit and coding happens. So a lot of billers, after the patient has been seen for care, might have some involvement in the process. So they might take the charges directly from the providers or from the software that is producing that. That's maybe the EHR, the electronic health record or electronic medical record. They might be pulling that information to create a claim. And it's with that information is where the revenue cycle, the role of a medical biller, begins. So as a medical biller, they may have a function that involves supporting coding. They may have some responsibilities related to ensuring the codes are where they're supposed to be, or I'm not going to go too far in depth, but the diagnoses that are linked to the right procedure codes, those kinds of things. They might have responsibility in that area, and they may not. So depending on the organization and where kind of where you land, if the size of the organization is larger, you may not touch any of that. So my folks that are in this space, would you guys agree, as a hospital team member, you probably don't touch much on the coding side? There may even be an entire department devoted to that comes from the provider that's kind of in the middle. So thinking of the different sizes of the organization when we're talking about a biller's role is going to matter. So as we move through the rest of this cycle, from claim submission through processing, through payment denial, AR, and patient billing, pretty much the entire remainder, I should say, of this revenue cycle is typically something that some form of a medical biller would do. When I say some form of a medical biller, just like a hospital system we were just chatting about, you may not, as a medical biller, be a person that is responsible for reconciliation and payment posting, but there is someone responsible for that process, and they would, in the broad term, be medical billers as well. So really, really important to know that there's you as a biller might be focused on one function, like claims follow-up or denial follow-up, things like that. But the other folks that do things like charge entry, maybe submitting claims, maybe submitting statements, they are, in the broad sense of the term, also medical billers. They just have a very specific niche that they're responsible for, one specific area. So I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. So really at like 15, if we're looking at this as a clock, so 15 minutes all the way through the rest of that clock is typically the responsibility of a biller. So just keep that in mind when we're chatting today. And my folks that are billers in this space, I want you guys to share too, like, what is it that you have been responsible for? Are you doing one area of the revenue cycle or more? And as we chat today, feel free to ask lots and lots of questions. I'm going to move this baby out of the way. There we go. Feel free to ask lots and lots of questions, and know that this is a space where I want to make sure you guys feel like you're getting clarity, especially when we're talking about what a typical day of a medical biller looks like. I don't want you to leave here with questions. So ask your questions in the chat, in the comments chat. I don't know where it shows up on whatever place you're on. So somewhere where there's a box where you can type. So yeah, I love it. Yeah, glad you explained that. Many get confused. Yeah, a lot of people do. And for sure, when it comes to when someone is working in a very specific area, like, oh, I'm not a medical biller, I'm the one just that working rejections. I'm like, okay, you're doing medical billing. What you're doing is medical billing. So it's really important for people to understand that it's a very broad term, and it really comes, when we use the term medical biller, it comes from this concept of what we affectionately refer to as end-to-end billing. So what that means is literally where we just saw that chart started at 15 and it goes all the way to the other end. So that 15 is where there we go, getting camera. There we go. 15 is where the cycle starts. And then at 60, right, if you're thinking about the clock, is where it ends. So the biller starts at the beginning and ends, right? So, and it goes all the way to the end. So there are billers, and there have been traditionally in smaller practices or private practices, we'll just say, not just smaller practices, the billers are what we call end-to-end billers. So it's really important to understand that, right? So Rose, have you worked as an end-to-end biller before?
Sort of, actually, with that first first position of being in the ambulance billing service, I kind of was, because of the fact that I would take notes. Let's just say the company that the county EMS I did, I would have to go in and I'd have to put those charges in. Before I could put the charges in, I had to read what the paramedics would send, so that way I could gauge what level it would be considered, what level of CPT code I would have to put in, or HCPCS code I'd have to put in. And then I would have to read and see what type of diagnoses I could add. So I'd have to start there. So I did do the whole end to end in that sense.
All the way to making sure that if there were patient balances, the remainders also got sent out. Yep. So there's a lot of organizations that leverage, even in billing companies. I still see billing companies that run their billing company with folks that work as end-to-end billers. So they assign one person responsibility over an entire account. I am a personal pet peeve of mine is when people do that, because it's one of the sells that we say as a billing company is that when a provider or organization decides to give you their book of business, one of the best reasons for that is it gives them an opportunity to have the reliance on the company concept, right? Like feeling, God bless you, my little guy's in the office with me, feeling like they are not going to find too much reliance on the, it's okay. Hi. Too much reliance on the, it's all good. Welcome home. Too much reliance on their, on that individual. Cause like, that's the problem with having one person running billing in a practice. A lot of organizations find that, or just individuals, they find it challenging that if they experience turnover, or that like one person chooses to leave, they now have the weight of that individual leaving, right? It's like now that there's a big gaping hole. And so when you do that with your billing company, you're basically creating the same potential problem, not just for the client, but also for yourself. Because it's like you give that person responsibility of everything. When that person leaves, everything is messy and everything is left untended to. So, but Iris says it's buffering on her side. Is it on her side? Is everybody good? We're good? Okay.
I think we're good with, I can see you and hear you okay, so I'm not
okay.
sure.
Iris, try, and I hate to pull you away from LinkedIn. Maybe try joining on YouTube, see if it's better. I'm not sure if it's LinkedIn, maybe. Okay. Yeah. What Rose just explained. Yes. That you were doing some coding there. If you were adding diagnoses. Yeah. And there are, go ahead.
So I'm going to be honest with everybody here. My niche is actually insurance follow-up, insurance research. Oh, there goes the buffering thing. I noticed it. I'm having a little bit of an issue too. But that is my niche. So I have never actually been formally trained or gotten a certification in coding. It was kind of I was taught by others, and it was on the job training. And it was a lot of questions to be asked, and making sure I did things properly, because in all honesty, I could only go so far where I would assume, we'd use this diagnosis. We couldn't, and I definitely couldn't, because I was not a coder. But I was doing somewhat. So it's kind of, sorry.
You're so good. A lot of businesses, and those of you who are new to billing and coding, might even have experienced this, where you get into a practice and someone is like, oh, well, you just put this here because that's what we do. Like, we just need to change this out, and here's why. And they teach you logic, essentially billing logic. And, to be frank, there's not a body of people of I'm trying to think of, what am I say, like a network that's going to come after you, I should say. Like, how do I say this? A policing agency is what I'm really trying to say there. It's not like a policing agency that's saying, oh, you can't do coding if you are not licensed or not certified. Now, there's a liability aspect there. Like, if you don't understand coding, you should not be doing coding. And there are organizations and practices that are like, nope, completely draw the line and say never, ever, ever. Someone who is not licensed, who does not, have training from an organization, can touch coding. So, that's just something that is policy according to different types of organizations and practices. So I love it. So it's all medical billing says I'm accustomed to doing end to end in all of my jobs. And now I have a company, I have to change my perspective. So I will say this, that you will find it supportive, even if it's not all functions that you're like slicing up, but thinking of ways to departmentalize in some way. And you guys will hear me like harp on this constantly. The mind that does fantastic job with payment posting, that has 99.9% accuracy, but speed, like just flying through posting, is a different mind than the person who likes to do AR and likes to research and likes to argue their points. It's a totally different. Now, there are people who can shift between functions and roles, and I can totally attest to that can, fake it for a while. They feel good about it, but eventually what happens is this. Eventually you hate parts of your job where those things take you forever and you don't know why. You're like, why do I always, have trouble meeting this deadline? Or why do I always have problems with like X, Y, Z? Like there's situations where you'll find yourself like more challenged with certain aspects of the position. And it's really because it's out of alignment for you. And it's something that is not keeping you in if you guys know the concept of being in flow, it's not keeping you in flow. It's not keeping you in a place and in a state where you feel like things are happening with ease. Even if it's a lot of work, you feel really good. Yes. So yeah, exactly. Says, especially doing appeals. Yeah. So, and it's not impossible. It's all medical billing. It's not impossible to find someone who can be a whiz at all of it. But at some point, after 5-8 years in, maybe even less, could be a year in, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, like whatever it is that they're weak at, if it's payment posting or like whatever they just don't enjoy, whatever feels less fulfilling, it's going to be like pulling teeth, or you're going to always find yourself asking, oh, did you get that done? Oh, did you? And you'll drive yourself crazy. So
that can also be for different specialties.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
like there's certain specialties that you can fall in love with. And then others, again, it's like pulling teeth. I had just dread working on this particular specialty today. And you put it off. So yeah, it can fall
and then
in
it becomes a problem. Yes, and then it's like growing and it bites you and it's like, screaming at you. Like, I was gonna say bite you in the butt, pretty much. It could bite you in the butt. So I love it. Oh, Teresa says same thing, that she taught herself as well. Yeah, or she was taught as well, but yeah, finally decided. That's the thing is, I think in general, and those of you who are billers, if you don't have a certification, and I say like, just if you were an on the job taught person, someone who completely caught on and feel really good about it, but you kind of have that feeling of like imposter syndrome keep creeping in, where you're like, I think I know what I'm doing, but I don't know if I know what I'm doing. Somehow, even just sitting for that certification, and Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, or tell me if you agree with this. Once you get that certification, it just feels like, I knew what I was doing all along. Like I knew it, but now I've got like the credentials to prove it. So it just feels good. So
very proud of you, Teresa. That is a very, very good thing to have.
Yeah, not your
and
love.
there's something else.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. You aren't into this, but yeah. Cross your
and those of you looking into billing, kind of think about that. You can look into something, and I mean, I started off end-to-end billing, and I think that helped me in a way. But I mean, not all job postings have that, so you may want to think about what you're applying for if you're trying to get into it. Think about what you're applying for, and then and see if that's going to be the right fit for you. I'm not saying you have to start at end-to-end billing. If you know you're someone who likes to do research, look for jobs that or for job postings that are for that. If you know you like payment posting, which is basically data entry, just right away, look for something like that. But if you're someone who wants to see the job as a whole, see the whole revenue cycle, so you can be flexible, then I would look for something that it's an end-to-end type thing.
Yes, and I agree that like learning different areas is going to benefit you just to understand it. Even if you decide that you know exactly what you enjoy the most, sometimes just being familiar, like Teresa's comment about being cross-trained, like be willing to learn it because you need to understand how it impacts what you do. Right? Because you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know why this is this or that is that, and why, let me just say that, let me give one really very specific example. Something like ID numbers being wrong on a claim, if you don't understand where that starts, like where that information comes from and ways that it could be mitigated or completely avoided as much as possible, we're going to say as much as possible on the back end, where you don't have those types of data capture issues with the wrong dates of birth or the wrong insurance ID numbers, that is only going to help you understand where you could possibly take the issue to. You could say, hey, front office manager, can you start to make sure your front desk staff runs an eligibility check for all patients? Or maybe we can start looking at a real-time eligibility system to check all of our patients before the day. Like all of those tools, you wouldn't know that it would be of value. You would know, okay, people do it, but I don't know why. Well, now you know why, right? Because you can kind of piece the puzzle together. So I love it. You guys are awesome with your questions. Yeah. So yes, Teresa, yeah, you're welcome, my dear. You're welcome. I find being certified is helpful for several reasons. Mainly, it helps you get out of your comfort zone. Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is how I was taught, and so it is what it is, and I don't need to learn more. Yes. Oh my gosh, perfectly stated. Listen, there are so many people who, like, they just get in there. And I don't not saying this to be awful or mean or anything, but reality is that some people just feel like, I'm a professional, I know everything, and I've been doing this for this many years, and I don't need to learn anymore. Listen, I'm a student of everything, of life, of all things, and I'm always willing to learn and realizing that, like, feeling flexible and realizing that agility, like feeling the ability to move with new information, it's like a superpower. It's like a superpower, like recognizing I can pick up a book or I can take a course and I can get like 1% better at what I do. Like
if you can get 1% better, that is a great achievement.
Massive.
That is a great achievement.
Yeah.
I strive to be better at my job each and every day. And sometimes you may seem you're working on one particular claim all day long, but if you're trying to learn the ins and outs of it, and we'll say why it denied, why you need to appeal it, it's going to make you better, not just for that, make things better, not just for that claim, but for your job as a whole, because you'll understand more.
Yep. And it makes you more of an asset to any organization when you have a deeper understanding. And, it's all medical billing. Maybe you can attest to this as well. Once you start to understand it, then all of a sudden you feel like I could pretty much do anything that I want. Like I could start my own company. I could do, you almost, like I said, you feel like you're kind of, if you got the entrepreneurial fire in you, you feel like you've got all the right ingredients and the understanding. So yeah, but a tribe's point, it's some of the stuff you just may not want to do. And listen, like, you have to recognize that there's an area for you in all things, whether it's healthcare or any other that might be a better lane for you to find yourself in, right? There are people in healthcare that are doing stuff in healthcare that kind of attached to finance and billing in a way, but they know nothing about billing. And you don't, if you decide you don't like billing and you want to go in a totally different direction, you could still be in healthcare, be attached to finance in some way, and not have to know or learn all of the details of the billing realm.
Like the credentialing teams.
Yeah.
That is not my area. I have dabbled a little in it, and it was one of those things. Whenever Jasmine and I were talking during my interview, I said, I I'm not a credentialer. I can't.
We were hiring for 2 positions at the time, and so I said, "Are you doing credentialing, or do you like credentialing, or is that something just in
Hard no.
case?"
Not that I can't do it. Now, I mean, I
Right.
can. It's just
Like, to
I
learn.
have very limited knowledge, and it's not something I can't learn. I mean, I can, but it's just one of those things that are just not my passion because, I mean, it's just, I guess it's the legalese of it all. I'm just not great with it.
I feel you there. All the paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork involved in that.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a snore fest for people who don't really enjoy like that. You have to enjoy, again, back to like that reading and the researching and you know, it's that the eye to like compare information and find like variances. Like if you get a kick out of like editing someone's paper and finding errors, you might like credentialing. You might like credentialing. And then I love what you said here. Yes, healthcare has changed, right? I mean, it's like insane how quickly. I mean, I think about how quickly. I mean, for us, it feels like fast. My kids are like, that's a long time ago. But it feels like
That
it's
seems
changed a
very
lot.
quick, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a lifetime since you know, basically my husband's lifetime since healthcare was even born. And so it's a pretty short period to think about it, but it's definitely something that um, has changed very quickly in such a short period. So, but I guess it's kind of like phones, right? Once we were tied to our phones against a wall, and now we have our phones wherever we want.
Exactly.
Ashley, okay. I'm going to get started. I'm sorry. I started going to a certificate program for medical billing and coding, and I wanted to do coding, then took a medical billing class, and how I'm here in billing. Yeah, I love it. It's so funny you say that. This is why it's so important. I was speaking to someone earlier to just do a little bit more research and really understand what you're getting yourself into, right? Like taking the course, I'm sure helped illuminate for you, Ashley, that like I don't think I like coding as much. like I think I like billing. And so, you know, I
Yep.
mean, you have to be willing to kind of, you know, explore that a little bit more. So, wouldn't that be a great day if the front office would care? Yeah, I love that. I think the front office needs a week in billing to understand. Yeah. So,
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you, a tribe. I
yes.
do. Um, and back to Ashley's comment. You know, she said she started off, she wanted to be a coder. I think you and I have talked about it before. If you know, if I were ever to want to do coding, there's only 2 specialties I'd like to do it in. I'd like to do it in like therapy kind of thing, or again back to the EMS thing, because I'm one of those people, I just love to read the stories. And you can read and you can get some, you read about people. I know that sounds silly and it's probably, you know, like I sound like I'm invasive, but I mean, that would be where I'd want to do coding. Those are the only 2 times I'd really want to do coding. Other than that, I think I'm exactly where I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and it might be interesting at first, but if it's not, you know, you'll find out quickly. You'll
Mm-hmm.
be interested, and then at some point you're like, oh my gosh, especially if the person in you is a fighter and wants to get on, you know, and argue a claim and write an appeal and
Mm-hmm.
all that.
Oh yeah.
I love it. This is so good. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the meat of what we wanted to discuss today. So typically, when a medical biller starts their day, where would you say some of them start? Let me see. I'm just checking a couple other. Yeah, thank you so much for taking that off. So let's talk about clearinghouse, I guess, or like claims and getting the claims out the door. So really thinking about the chart or the diagram that I showed earlier, thinking about where the claim starts. So if a biller is responsible for charges, like Rose was talking about earlier, where you might have to do some support with coding or ensuring certain aspects are there, all that happens before the claims go out. And claims and claim submission needs to or should happen, on my vote, on at least a daily basis, even if it's not for that same day, in order to even out the revenue, to keep it steady, to keep the cash flow going. You're going to want claims hitting the door of the insurance company
Mm-hmm.
every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
what else happens after the claims go out the door, Rose? What is a typical after
So
the
once the claims go out the door and they hit the clearinghouse, that clearinghouse has got, you know, its own program or whatnot to read over your claim and catch any errors that may be on it. This is what I call claim to fix. It's called different things in different companies, but it will reject those claims, and it'll kind of put it in its own little work list for you to do. And you go in and you fix those claims, whether it may be that when they try to send it to the insurance, something was wrong. Maybe your subscriber ID was wrong, or the name was wrong, date of birth, whatever the case may be. It could be something along there, or it could be an issue with the coding part of it, that you can get rejections for the coding. Say you're CPT or a chiropractic CPT, for example. We know that CPT for 98949, if it's billed to Medicare, requires an AT modifier. Well, if it's going to Medicare or a Medicare replacement plan and it doesn't have that AT modifier, you'll get a rejection for it saying, hey, so you need a modifier.
So what does the biller do with that information?
So then the biller then would go and go back to contact their provider and ask, say, hey, we've got this rejection. We just want to make sure that we want to verify whether or not the AT modifier is acceptable here, because that AT modifier means they are in active treatment. Because they may not be in active treatment, they may be in a maintenance mode, and maintenance care for chiropractic services is not covered by Medicare. Mm-hmm. So that would be something you don't just add it. You would need to verify it with your provider first.
Yeah. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, there might be rules in your organization that says, okay, if then this, meaning like they might already have told you that if you see this situation, here's what you should do and could do without engaging the provider. But a biller could be responsible for is the word I was looking for, engaging with the providers on a daily basis. So it could be that you have to engage with the provider or someone that is maybe a supervisor or something. So knowing that could be a part of your day, communicating with providers. So knowing that if you don't like to talk to people or you don't like being the intermediary, a biller's responsibilities in most organizations can be somewhat of an intermediary, someone who is kind of speaking to one person in a different, like we talked about coding earlier, you might have to go to the coding department. You might have to go to reach out to the providers or task them in some way. You might have to send something all the way up the chain to the front desk or other folks that are doing things in the patient services department. They might need information. So you're really kind of interfacing with a number of people. So recognizing, even if you're outside of the practice at a billing agency, as Rose was kind of articulating there, like you're still going to talk to someone at the practice in some level, whether it's speaking or emailing or ticketing or tasking, whatever the process is for the organization, there's going to be communication. So most billers, I mean, unless again you've chosen your lane, and your lane is going to be data processing of sorts, where you're kind of head down, you may not have as much responsibility, like if you're doing payment posting. But let's just be honest, like payment posters, people who are putting in payments that come in, something isn't there that is missing, you might have to speak to someone else about it. So know that there's going to be some engaging with other individuals. So moving on, I was just going to check a couple of, I said this one already. Sorry. Wrong one. Buffalo, New York, certified with billing and coding. I like coding better than billing. I like that, Facebook user.
There you go.
See, you realize it. You recognize it, I think, over time. I mean, I'm like way behind on comments. Sorry, guys. We're seeing them. We
are definitely.
It totally does help you feel more confident when you understand why things are done. Yes, absolutely. Learn more. Never feel like you're gonna stop learning. If you stop learning, it's like you're stopping growth, right? Expansion, and everything is expanding in the universe. So you should be too. More work with billing. You think it's more work? I'm curious. So
honestly, yes. And I think I mentioned this in one of our lives before. There's only so much a coder can do. there's only so much work for a coder. Let me rephrase that. There's only so much work for a coder. When you're in the back end, in the billing part of it, a coder can be out of work for 6 months, whereas we still have more we have to do because of the
They
fact
actually
that
said
the process just, it, depending on how the claims are doing and what you're fighting with the insurances, the claims are just going to keep trickling in. You're
I
going to
like
be
it. And
sitting
there
down.
are new things all the time. So
Yes.
coders have newness in the relationships with their providers. Like sometimes you're learning new things about your providers. You're learning new aspects of like the work that maybe they're assigning you. But the truth is that the job, as Rose was articulating and what Ashley's saying here, it feels fairly similar. But I love that you said that. So coding is your safe place and billing gives you more things to do.
It does. It really does.
Good way to put it. Yeah.
I
Like it.
see here there's a comment from MM. Let's see, regarding the taxonomy number.
Let's see. So claims responsibility, is it claims department responsible for taxonomy? From a okay, so taxonomy in most cases goes along with the setup of the provider in the software. When you say, is it a responsibility of the claims department? It depends if the claims department is responsible for setting up the provider. Now, I believe like no one should, I'm a firm believer that it's teamwork that really makes things come together beautifully. All right. You guys have to understand that. So I don't ever believe like, oh, that's not my job. Oh, I'm not going to touch it. Like, I believe if you see that there's a problem, it goes wherever it needs to go and you make a big enough fuss about it till it gets resolved. You don't just ignore it because it's impacting someone, right? Ultimately, the people that are impacted are like you and me and your grandmothers and your your children, because they're patients. We are all patients. So like if you don't resolve something, it's not like, oh, I'm going to stick it to my boss. Like there's like, I'm just not going to pay attention to that patient's claim and just let it sit there. Right. So like, I believe that the right thing to do would be to get it to the right department. So, and then I'm going to see if you have any follow-up questions to that. But yes, if the claims department is responsible for setting up the software to make sure claims go out, then yes, taxonomy number should be something they can resolve. If they're not responsible for it, it still should be something that they bring attention to enough. So let's see. I do more billing than coding, and it's not that bad. Like you mentioned, the front end makes it tough. Yeah, the front end. There's so many things we could do to improve the front end. We should have a conversation about that. Like, if we had a perfect front desk, what would that look like? We actually have a course that's releasing here soon. I would love to do that episode so I can see if it includes all of what we have going into our what is our course called? Medical Office Excellence. I don't remember what it's called. Yeah, I'm getting Medical Office Reception Excellence. Everyone's giving me thumbs up in the back. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, Medical Office Reception Excellence is the name of the course, and it's I believe we've covered all angles, like from the patient perspective, the customer service, from the billing, right? But most important thing that most people don't communicate, it's like the front office, there's a lot going on, right? They're just like boom, bam, boom, getting all this stuff done. They don't talk about the importance of their role. They have to know that literally they hold the keys to success. And they need to be acknowledged for that too. Like, so it's also a responsibility of the managers to make sure they understand, hey, you guys accuracy is amazing, and high five, and celebrating that, because it impacts everything downstream.
The more detailed they are, the easier it makes things on the back end.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think that the person really understand. Yeah, they don't understand. That's why the turnover can be high in reception, because they're not respected. And listen, they are the face of the organization. And so I don't understand it. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, the patients interact with those individuals, sometimes have more of a relationship with those individuals more than the providers themselves, because the providers may or may not have much time patient facing or face to face with their patients. And so it's those folks and the nurses and MAs that that really develop these relationships with their patients. So, I mean, I think it's so important. Let me see. I skipped over by mistake. Let's see.
I like the, yeah.
Projections. Yeah.
Yes. You're absolutely right, a tribe. Sometimes you do have to go. They're not very clear. And especially when they go with how they're using their terminology about how they're doing it. I wish I had a rejection up right now to be able to pull up to show you guys an example. I mean, they're talking about their ANSI lines and this and that. I'm gonna be honest with you, I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know what that ANSI line, whatever is. I have no idea. I just know this claim is not going out, and I have done everything in my power to fix it. So yes, sometimes you do have to call the insurance company or the clearinghouse company and get them to assist you in figuring out what's wrong with this claim, why it's not going through.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. So I love this. Okay, so it's all medical billing says that taxonomy is usually credentialing. So if we're talking about the incorrect taxonomy for the organization itself, like the setup of the organization. So taxonomy codes comes through the licensure for individual providers. So their licenses have a designated taxonomy code already assigned when they get licensed, but organizations have specific taxonomies that they apply for when they create their NPI, and they have attached taxonomy codes that like go along with those group NPIs. And so, yes, it's the source of the taxonomy could be credentialing issues. So it's all medical billing point, I was thinking more from like the taxonomy not matching in the software, so kind of more in the claims department, but you're probably right. The source of it could be what's causing it. No matter what, claims department needs to make sure someone knows that taxonomy is not showing correctly, so claims aren't getting accepted, whether it's a setup issue in the software or setup issue in the National Provider Enumeration System, NPES, that issues the NPIs.
So I love how she brought this up. It actually reminded me of an issue I had before I left my previous the previous company I worked for. I know normally we don't say names or whatever, but I'm not bashing at all. So please don't come after me. North Carolina Medicaid, and if you deal with Medicaid in general, a lot of times, like the taxonomy, like talking about taxonomy with the credentialing and getting things set up with the different insurances that your provider is going to be accepting. Some insurance companies, such as North Carolina Medicaid, their taxonomy, the list that they approve, is not actually, doesn't always match up with what your taxonomy is. It may be just a touch different. You have to specify things a little differently, so you have to get that just right, and that is on the credentialing type level. But sometimes it is on the biller to find out why they're not accepting this taxonomy versus wanting to take this one. So it is a
research.
Full circle.
Exactly. Research. Yep. It's like we are the investigators. We're the ones who find the solutions to the problems. We typically will do that by investigating. So I like that. My easiest billing department was when I worked at the front desk and did the billing. Nice. I like that. That's like definitely possible if you know that you want to be in a smaller practice and you know that you want to have more control, we'll say, over everything that goes on, and feel like also comfortable with the relationships that you can establish with your patients. Something like a smaller practice, geriatric medicine, mental health services, maybe a therapist office or a LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker, someone who does counseling. That's also something to consider as well. These are really good discussions. So, okay, let's continue down. We're moving like a little slower. So next, after we go through our claims, you're done with your claims get out the door. We're happy. We're like, oh yeah, they're flying high. Let's say everything goes well. We're like cruising. Then money comes in the door. And then you might be responsible for putting the payments into the software. That's where we were talking about earlier, where payment posting could be a function. And that payment posting function could be dual. Like you could be doing payment posting that comes in from the front desk from your patients or in the mail from your patients. And then you might also be responsible for doing payments that come in from the insurance carriers as well, whether that's electronic or on paper. So really important to recognize that both are possible. If, sad story, your claims do not get paid for some reason, then you end up with a denial. So rejection is something that happens before the claim is accepted, just so we're all on the same page. So before the insurance company opens up the gates and lets the claim in the door, the rejection happens, and then you have to work through it. When the claim is accepted, claim gets processed, or what we call a fancy word, adjudicated. Claim gets adjudicated. This is a really big word to say, processed. When the claim gets processed, they either pay or they deny. Denial, also the responsibility in most departments of the biller. And when you think about different software, and my folks who are in hospital systems can probably agree with this statement, they typically work off of work queues. So there's like a list of denials. This is all they do. That if they're in denials, they're in denials. Like there's like hundreds of them in the work queue, and then just like reordering them, resorting them based off of criteria that's relevant to their department or specialty as far as priority goes. But yeah, so denials is totally a responsibility of a biller. And I would ask, like, how much of your day, Rose, is typically spent on denials, or like week, let's say week of your week, like percent.
A week, I would say probably a decent chunk, actually. It's a decent chunk because, I mean, that going through the claims fixes and whatnot, that kind of thing, it usually you can get done with that within about an hour or so of your day, depending on how many offices you're dealing with, or whatever the case may be, how big that office is. You can usually get that done in about an hour. After that,
percentage, just say percentage.
I would say my percentage is probably close to 50% of my day.
Okay.
Very, very, very close to 50% of my day.
And the reason why we put a lot of emphasis, just so everyone's on, and we've talked about this before, but like the emphasis on denials, the goal is to prevent it from hitting heavily on your AR with timely filing or other things, or timely filing for appeals or other issues that might come as a result. So denial focus and resolution as quickly as possible is what I would call preventative medicine. It's preventative medicine for bills. So we got another bot in the house. Yay. I guess that's a good story. We get more bots. These bots are insane on YouTube, man. All right. So, so I love this question. Do clearinghouses come with denials come with billing? Sorry, I was going to say it backwards. Do clearinghouses come with billing software? So it's actually, Facebook users usually the other way around. So this billing software will sometimes come with clearinghouses that are integrated. So most software companies are not themselves clearinghouses because it's kind of a totally different beast. There are a very select few that they themselves are also a clearinghouse because they're that big. Like an example of that is like Athena is one of them. Athena Health has like a massive, they actually started in the clearinghouse business primarily and moved into billing software. So they know both, and their system is built around really understanding the claims and claims processing, right? So then it creates work queues and things like that. So work queues, like Teresa said, yes, work queue madness in big systems like that. There's just a lot of work queues, a lot of different work queues. But in a lot of billing software, they create relationships or partnerships with clearinghouses in which the two can work well together. So they're not like exactly one, but there a lot of the times you'll find that they can be built in. Then there are software that you have to pull the claims file out and put it into a clearinghouse. We've got both scenarios. I've seen a lot of different scenarios where like the clearinghouse might be somewhat integrated, but there's kind of an automatic process for it. So that's a really great question.
It is.
Yeah. So what's next? So we did our denials. Denials are good. We're like rocking and rolling. What else do we do? What else does a biller do?
Well, after you work those denials, then it comes time to start working that AR report. And usually, I think I've mentioned this before, if you work those denials, you start chipping away at that AR report. So you do those first, your workload gets a little easier as you move along. And then you start, like I said, you start that AR report, which is your aging revenue, those aging claims. And however you decide to do it is how you decide to do it. You got to figure out which fires you got to put out first. But generally, you try to work some of those older claims first.
Yep, exactly. So we're working on accounts receivables report, and that report has all the things that are not paid or completely resolved, we'll say. So maybe out of 3 procedure codes that were sent, maybe only 2 were paid and there's 1 outstanding. We don't know why the claim got rejected or it didn't get processed for, the charge or procedure code got rejected and didn't get paid. We need to do some research. So that's going to be the responsibility of the biller. Or if we put a procedure code on that shouldn't have been there, or we didn't put one on that should have been there, then we would do what a tribe was saying, which is a corrected claim. And that is something that does fall into the responsibilities of a biller when it comes to doing corrected claims or asking for claims to be reviewed, sending in medical notes, like all of the potential issues that might arise with your claims. That's a biller's job to start to combat that. This is where we talked about earlier, when the fight can start, when you can start fighting for your claims.
And usually it starts whenever you get that, and whenever you're doing those denials, you're usually already in the process of trying to fix it. You work that denial, you send in that corrective claim, you send in that reconsideration or that appeal. So that's part of the denial process.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is a general workflow typically for a biller on a day-to-day that might include just researching claim statuses. It's kind of a higher level, we'll say, claims that are there are a lot of different kind of terms that people will call them, but claims with no response, basically, where we didn't see a claim that hit the clearinghouse with an accepted report, or you didn't see a denial come in or no payment. So those are typically the claims that hit the kind of work queues, we'll say, for calling to just get claim statuses to find out what happened to the claim. So all those things are responsibilities. That is the meat of what we do as billers. Like that is why they value us so much. It's like trying to find. It's like taking I have my hand like this because I'm trying to put like a squeeze on an orange. It's like we take the orange and we like squeeze it, try to get as much juice out of it as possible. That's our AR report. We're just like, we're looking at it and we're like, how much more can we get out of this by just finding the dollars that haven't been paid. So yeah, after all that, payments come in, processed insurance, we're happy, we're rocking and rolling. What else does a biller do?
Well, after you've gotten your resolution on your claims, now it's time to send out the patient their bill.
Yeah, if our patient has a responsibility, then they get their notification of what's remaining and hopefully why and all that good stuff. And then all the way at the very end, this may or may not be something that you as a biller are responsible for yourself. It might be someone in your department that is responsible for quality assurance or reviewing what you do, or reviewing how the revenue cycle works, making sure things are happening, quality auditing, essentially, of what we do as billers, making sure that the quality is present. So I love it. What other questions do you guys have about what happens on the billing? Oh, if there's another question real quick, Rose, that Iris asked earlier, that it's been a challenge to stay on course when you're getting pulled in many different directions. Is that, as a biller, I'm curious, like, are we talking about being a biller, it's hard to stay on course?
Well, it can be. It really can be, because again, you have so many, in all honesty, a biller is surrounded by fires. And you have to put them out. And then if you have your provider or a patient calling and saying, hey, what's going on with this? Well, we need to get this taken care of as soon as possible. You're getting pulled away from whatever you were doing before, and you get into that, and then you've got another one coming. I understand completely. You have your brain has too many tabs open eventually. So it can be tough to seem like you're staying on task, because you can go blaze through a bunch of this stuff, work a bunch of it out of the way, 25% of what you've got to do in an hour, but then you can have one particular claim that it can take you all day. It's just one of the things about billing that you have to understand is going to happen.
Right. I love, this was such a really great little add-in here. It's all about medical billing. So there's a couple of things. I don't really talk collections separately, because sometimes departments have collections folks that pull the after the patient has aged out of the billing cycle. So they'll pull the collections lists to go for, could be either sent to collections or be considered for collections. And credits totally depends on the organization. Some of them have finance deal with credits. Some of them have a biller that just reviews and confirms them. So it's not always, and some folks don't listen, y'all. If you think you overpaid your doctor, pay attention to your EOBs as they come in, because there are a lot of practices that don't even think about credits. And the reality is that unless they are audited by an organization, that's why I like or groups like FQHCs, is that they have annual audits. There are others that have rural health centers as well, that have oversight over what they have to report, all of their different accounts, right? Who's holding on credits, who has balances, what's the revenue, all these detailed criteria that they have to report annually. So they see the credits on a regular basis, and they typically, a lot of them still do not reach out to the patient. They wait sometimes till it ages. Like they hold on to it and then they send it to the state. So if you've never done, there's a website, it just is this like a total PSA, like public service announcement for you guys. There are websites that, and I can't think of the name of one right now. Maybe someone can help me in the back, but it's like, it's a website that you can put your information in that can help you find, my brain is saying lost money. What is it called? Unclaimed property. Sorry. Yes.
That's it. Yep. Unclaimed property, unclaimed money. Yep.
So every state has a department for unclaimed property. And literally the only requirement that most states have for folks that have credits, and there's no agencies that are out there for most practices that are like crucifying them for not sending money back, unless you're a government regulated agency, right? Most of them just hang on to your money until someone says, oh, you need to send that back to the state. And most places, it's every 4 years, 3 to 4 years back. Every state's a little different. The most I've seen some go back pretty far in certain states, but in most states, it's somewhere around 3 or 4 years that they have to report back unclaimed property, which means they got to send your money to the state, and then it literally just sits in the state. So anyway, I'm just harping on that. I need y'all to make sure that you search for unclaimed property in your state, because you could literally just be having money sit there from doctor's offices, from state agencies, from your phone company, from your gas company. Every single potential vendor that you have paid money to that might have owed you money that didn't have proper accounting practices, they send it to the state. And so literally money.
To elaborate more on her, I actually have some experience in this part right here. The previous company I worked for, when we ran our statements twice a month, patient statements twice a month, we did collections once a month. And again, how you decide to do how the collections are run, that depends on your provider. It depends on the company you're working for. So you have to go about how big the debt has to be before it goes, how many statements you've sent out before it goes, that kind of thing. But to clarify on that, I mean, it a lot of times it can be your particular someone who does just the billing part, the insurance part. It could be on them, or again, you could have a separate department for that, because the first company I worked for had its own collections department. So it just depends on how you want to do it. And where she was talking about Jasmine, when she was talking about providers who just let those credits build up, I had one of those providers. I had a chiropractor in Colorado who was collecting what the copay was said to be on the patient's card. And there were patients that had hundreds and thousands worth of of credit
Credits.
that I would have to notify him about. One of the things that I do now is, if after everything's said and done, I notify the provider that a patient has a credit.
Yeah, it's great. And that's the thing, is we, as billers, our job's to tell them and remind them and remind them and remind them. Sometimes they don't do
Sometimes you gotta
anything
put
about
that
it.
alert up there, so that way if you're able to get into their EHR system, you put that alert in there. Let them know, hey, patient has a credit, a growing credit. Please don't collect anymore.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to do that.
Yes, and that is a really, really great point, Rose, because that's something that as billers we are also responsible for throughout the duration of a patient's care, is just paying attention to things that aren't happening right at the front desk. Like if you're not collecting, and you should be, right? Like let's say they thought the patient had a $10 copay and they really have a $40 copay. That's $30 that's coming up unpaid. That's going to have to be invoiced if the patient's coming in on a regular or recurring basis.
And then you get the patients going, hey, I paid my copay, or you get the office contacting you saying, well, the patient's been paying their copay the whole time. Well, their copay was this amount, but you're only collecting this amount, so they still have a bill.
Yep, exactly.
And then if the patient wants to, and that's something too you would need to do. If you have a discrepancy such as that, you call the insurance company yourself. You verify those benefits yourself to say, okay, well, what would the copay be for this particular service or a specialty? They can tell you what that copay would be. And then if the patient still feels that's incorrect, then they would have to file a dispute with their insurance, because you've done what you're supposed to do. You've verified it. They've gotten their EOB. You've gotten the EOB.
Yeah. Yeah. And that actually added in a little thought too. I didn't mention that earlier because it's not as common in most organizations now, but sometimes responsibility of a biller is verifying and getting eligibility, getting detailed benefits and eligibility for a patient, and authorizations as well. Also, a department is sometimes responsible for it, or you might be the main department individual responsible for it. It overlaps, both of those functions overlap to the front end. So it may not be anything that you ever touch, but in case, again, back to the small practices we were talking about earlier, if you're doing end to end and you're working in a solo provider practice and you're doing all things, you might be the one responsible for getting that authorization. So, all right. So, hey, I want to get started wrapping up here because it's late and both of us have little people that are waiting on us. But I love what Teresa said here. Every day was different for me, and I didn't know what was going on until I opened up my work queues to see where the fire started and died overnight. Yeah, it's true, right? It's like every day can be
very true.
This is
very true.
Structure and giving yourself parameters for your day and your week, making sure you have checklists, even if they're not giving it to you. There are some organizations that don't have as much structure around certain roles. They hire team members and then they hope that the person knows what they're doing, or they hope that the person can, create that for themselves. And some people are fantastic at it. Rose, I think, is to talk about her. Some people are fantastic at it because they just naturally have the desire to stay on task and stay organized. It helps them to stay organized, especially in a role like billing, because there's lots of parts, a lot of moving parts. And so it can be easy to miss a step or forget a step if you aren't touching things on a regular basis. So
let's see. I might have to unblur my background here.
We're gonna talk. Don't worry about it because I don't want to go too far. We're gonna talk about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say the next time we'll probably go over it. But she's right. A lot of times there will be you'll be given a set thing, but you have to make it your own, and again decide what's going to take priority that day when you come in. Even though you have parameters of things you need to get done in a day, sometimes something's going to take higher precedence over what you normally do. So you have to be flexible.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm missing some other questions from. It's not starring it. It's not showing up on my site start anymore. I'm looking for newbie asked some other questions. I was going to look. Oh, okay. I see it. Oh, did you reach? That's the one. That is the one. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Is medical billing separate from medical coding? The reason I ask is because when you search on medical billing jobs in Indeed, coding positions show up. Yes, that happens. I will say this, it is separate for most, but you may have heard us talk earlier in the conversation about folks that like Ashley was sharing that she started out in coding and enjoys billing more because it keeps her busy. Like that is something you will see commonly in certain organizations where they might utilize a person who is a biller and a coder to do a particular function because they need them to be coding services while they're also doing billing work. For the sake of what we would define it as a biller, it is a different job entirely, totally different. However, it's been kind of chunked together over the years that when people say I'm going into billing and coding, it's been blended together. Actually, Codemaster Coach and I, some time ago, did a Codemaster Coach for me on YouTube. Those of you who aren't on the YouTube platform right now, we did a video talking a lot about this discussion. Like, is coding billing? Is it the same thing? Why is it different? Right? And like, there's a lot of really important points to know about that. So if you haven't seen that video, check it out because I think it's going to help you a lot. There are a lot of organizations that try to blend the two together still. But with EHR and the way that the nature of EHR and kind of coding systems and logic that's somewhat built into EHR, it really takes someone that's a coder to help undo the things that it does incorrectly. Sometimes someone who just does coding, who understands that to correct little coding issues that sometimes are built into the rules in a coding system, because you got to keep up with guidelines. You have to know a little bit of broad information depending on your specialty. If you are in a specialty that has a lot, or in a like FQHC, I was mentioning earlier, there's a lot of specialties under one umbrella. Like, it's hard to be a coder for an FQHC because you got to know a lot of specialties, and you got to, a coder and a biller in that, because you got to know all things coding guidelines. Then you have to keep up with everything billing guidelines. So it takes a certain level of mastery, and that comes with a lot of experience. So yeah, that's such a great question. And yes, take a look at that video. We can talk about that more at a later date too. And if you guys have more questions about it, please let me know. I'd love to answer them. If the two are separate, then why is no one hiring for medical billing only when do you really need some type of certification for it, when you can be trained to be a medical biller? I'm not sure if I understand. So you're saying, yeah, if you're going to touch coding, most organizations want you to have a CPC, or, depending on what organization they're attached to, they want you to have a coding certification. There are billing departments and billing companies that don't require a certification because the certifying bodies aren't as strong as AAPC, which is the certifying body that offers the CPC, and then a HEMA, which is the original. That was the OG company for coders. They were the first, we'll just say they were the first to like firm up the world of coding, HEMA, and then AAPC was born out of a HEMA. So yeah, so I think if I'm understanding what you're saying is that you're not finding jobs that are just doing billing, and that I would say is too much of a generalization. There are definitely jobs that are just hiring primarily for billers or people doing billing functions. But I do think that it's important for you to understand coding and what coders do, especially if you, like we talked about earlier, plan on getting into an area where you might be working in one specialty with potential for touching coding and, smaller practices. So
I can kind of talk a little bit about what maybe is I think I get what's being asked here. A lot of medical billing companies want someone who has that certificate because it does help with the back end. However, a lot are also willing to do on-the-job training. Apply for it anyhow. Even if you don't, apply for it. If you have a medical billing history, that helps. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of places that are willing to do on the job training, willing to hire you green and train you.
Mhm.
So, but I just recently went through this, what, 6 months ago, Jasmine, where I was searching for something, and I was searching for an at home billing service, something I could do work from home, and a lot of what I was looking for, they were wanting someone who had a degree or had a certificate or this or that. And I would apply for it anyway. And all they can do is either say yes or no and say, well, you don't meet our qualifications. If you want to try, if you want to apply for it, try it. Go for it. Again, the worst that can happen is they say no.
Great advice. The worst that could happen, they would say no. I love that advice. It's the worst possibility. So do it anyway. And I do think, if you think that you might be going into an organization where you have to touch coding, try it on for size. Maybe try and study for CPC and see if you want to take that certification for CPC as well, for your certified professional coders certification. So it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt. There are a lot of people who do it and don't use it. So what ends up happening though is you have to maintain that credential. So recognize that if you don't like it, if you know you don't like coding, don't get into coding with the CPC, because then you have to maintain that credential in order to keep it along your name. So
Was it like every year, every 2 years that it has
I
to be
think
done,
it's 2
Jasmine?
years for CPC. Yeah, I'm not super familiar with their
Yeah.
guidelines, but I think it's 2 years and certain number of CEUs. So, all right, guys, we got to get out of here. I have my little guy here at the office with me. He's ready to get home. Is late, so I appreciate you guys for hanging out. And Rose, thank you so much for being a doll. I
Yes,
know
ma'am.
it's late for you, and I hope the kids aren't raising hell in the house right now.
Daddy finally came home, so he was trying to wrangle, but that 4-year-old, she just wanted to be on camera. That's why she kept coming in here.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Oh yeah, it's all medical billing says every 2 years. This is
Awesome.
great. All right, friends. So
Thanks.
listen, I said earlier, in case you did not hear, we are not here next Thursday, but we're back on the 29th. We are doing a New Year edition, and we're going to talk more workflow stuff, but we are going to just be excited celebrating the new year. And so come and join us for that live 6:30 on the 29th. Yes, happy holidays, friends. Everyone stay safe. I hope your holiday season is full of so much peace and joy and just recovery, relaxation, all the beautiful things, rest, all of the beautiful
Exactly.
things. Take care of
Exactly.
yourselves. Yes.
Everybody have happy holidays. Thank you for joining us. It was great to see you guys.
Yes. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for
Bye.
being here. Take care, everyone.